Okay, here we are. So it is a Thursday, and we are still on the month of hope. Lots of hope in the spring, lots of beautiful project, and lots of conversation to catch up. So today we have Arlene Jacobs with us, and Arlene's gonna tell us a very interesting conversation and how she get to do what she does. But before we go on, I want to make sure that you know that in the month of April, we have an incentive. If you're listening and you make some comment at the bottom of our video, either live or replay, you will get a chance of drawing for a free electronic ticket. It's called Link It to a Emma to a live performance. It's like a theater, but they performing through Zoom, and it's donated by Unbox Production from my friend Kimberly Sandstrom. And at the end of the month, we're gonna have a drawing for 6 linkets for people to watch the live performance. And I think the performance is called Irma Bembeck, Bombeck,
Bombeck. I'm a
Bombeck.
Bombeck. Yeah,
Yes.
that's very cool. I didn't know that, but that's one of
Oh
my favorites.
yeah, yeah. So make a comment so you can get into the drawing, and it's supposed to be a really great show. And I have watched it before, not Emma. It's a different production, but it's just really interesting. So that's why I want to say, don't forget. So Sarah is gonna help us starting off our conversation by introducing herself.
Sure. I'm going to kick off our conversation. Hello, everyone. It's good to be back again. I'm Sarah M. Will introduce very quickly. I grew up in Cambodia. Start out beautiful until that fateful day when the communist Khmerus took over our country. And you know what happened. They mistreat us, they kill us, and they starve us to death. I almost did not make it. For 4 horrible years, we struggled, and I'm so grateful that I make it through. And not only that, I was able to escape from the captivity and finally escape out of the country. I have been here for 40 years, and I'm just so grateful that I make it here. So you all are wonderful, and that's why I'm doing this. I want to share that no matter how hard thing is, we can survive if we make up our mind to and if we have faith. So that's all I want to say. And let's see, where is my book? I had to look for my book. I wrote my book, How I Survived the Killing Fields, and you can find it on my website, sarahim.com. And if you want to hear my story, you can also reach out to me, and that will be at my website on also sarahim.com. Or you can reach out to Lee as well. So we both are speakers. We will be happy to help you in any way we can. So back to you, Lee.
Thank you, Sarah. So my background is a little different, but very similar to what Sarah has been through. It is very the same time frame from 75 to 79. We both endure under the communist regime. She was in Cambodia, and I was in Vietnam. We didn't know each other. Didn't know that 40 years later we're gonna sit and talk to each other, but that was a destiny. And we survived through the ocean, pirates, hunger, thirsty, you name it, we've been there. And it was a long journey to get here. And like Sarah said, we both want to use our story and our experience to encouraging people, to empower people, to inspire other people that it doesn't matter how hardship you were in the past. If you stay there, you will get stuck. If you get out, you'll do great things. I too have a book that I wrote my memoir 6 months ago, and it's also available on Amazon and on my website. And if you want to go to my website, leatran.com, you can also listen to my TEDx talk, which I give you a snippet of my story. And we both speaker, like you said, like Sandra said, that we are inspirational speaker, and we will inspire your audience for whatever level that they need. We'll be there. Today we have Arlene, who's going to bring hope to a lot of things that it is called like a taboo subject that lots of people don't want to talk about. First of all, a couple weeks ago, we have somebody who come on to our program to talk about, how to take care of your loved ones when they're incapable of caring for themselves. So a long-term care. So today we're going to go a little deeper, one step further. How do you plan to celebrate their lives after everyth's said and done? That it's their time and they just can't hang around with you forever. How do you pre-plan? How do you get all of those ducks in a row so when things happen and when the time comes, you're not so panic? So Arlene, this is a very uncomfortable, awkward conversation, I would say, to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because
it's hard.
Yeah, it's almost like, ooh, I don't want to get there because I don't want to jinx myself. Right? So tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, and how do you even get into this planning stage for afterlife?
Well, I think that my story should start quite a few years before I got into this business. I've been on that side of the table when something unexpected happens to a loved one, or when you are the caregiver and you have to take care of someone. After grad school, I was going to go on for an MD, PhD, but decided to get married, got pregnant, had my first son, and he was born 9 months to my wedding day. And yes, people were counting.
Oh, God.
But he was born with a genetic defect, and he passed away at 18 months. So for most of his life, I spent all of my time with him, 24 hours a day as his caregiver. And when he passed, I was devastated. I decided that I didn't want to go on to medical school. I didn't want to go on and do any career. And I actually was pregnant with my second son at the time my first son passed away. My second son was born healthy. And when he got his diagnosis that he was healthy, I said, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. So I decided to stay home and raise my kids. And I had a daughter following 2 years later. So being a mom, I was a caregiver. I mean, that was what I did. I took care of my kids. I took care of the neighbors' kids. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I was there for everybody. My neighbors around knew that I was home. And my next door neighbor, I had an elderly couple on one side of my house, and her husband ended up having cancer. And when he passed away, she came over and knocked on my door, and she said, I can't get my husband to wake up. I can't get him to wake up. And she was in a panic. I went over, and he had passed. So I had to help her plan his funeral because she had nothing planned. And that was really difficult. So I have been there for family, and it just seems like every time I turned around, I was helping and taking care of people. A few years into this, I decided to start my own company, and I started a caregiving agency. And I had, by the time I closed it, I had 17 people working for me, and we had taken care of 75 families. So in that process, I helped them plan a lot of funerals. So
oh, gosh, I can't believe.
So
Lots of trips to the funeral home.
Yes. I got to know which ones I wanted to work with, which ones, if I had, hints
Right.
to give to the families.
Right.
And I also saw the value of pre-planning.
Mm.
So after I closed my company, because I never took a vacation, I never took a day off. If any of my caregivers called in sick, I took their shifts. If a hospice situation occurred, I would take those shifts so that my caregivers didn't have to be there with someone that they had
Yeah.
established a bond with, and they wouldn't
Right.
be there for their end days. Um, so I was quite burnt out at that time. Took about a year or so off, kind of off. I didn't really take it off. I've always worked my entire life doing.
Right. I
Um,
gotcha.
so I got recruited by the funeral company to help them plan people's funerals, and I've been doing this job for about 6 years.
Mm.
So yes, it's a really tough subject to talk about. But one of the things I like to focus on is that I'm there to help the families. This is something that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And we all know eventually that's where we're going to go. Now, we all want to go to heaven, but we don't want to die to get there. But we do. We have to do this. And if we don't plan our funerals for ourselves, somebody else is going to be planning it for them.
Yeah.
You know, I have another great example. My mother, when my son passed away, she saw what we went through, and that funeral was not planned. Obviously, I did not want to think about losing my son.
Yeah.
So when I had to plan his funeral, it was spur of the moment. Everything was rushed. My son passed away the Monday before Thanksgiving.
Oh gosh.
So on that Tuesday, I went into the funeral home. My husband and I sat down with the funeral director. He opened his book and he says, "Oh, Thanksgiving's Thursday. The guys, I think they're going to be off. We'll have his funeral on Wednesday." One day. I had one day to plan my son's funeral.
And to mourn. I mean, it's just like, yeah.
Yeah, that was not the way to do it. It
Right.
was like, I can't even really remember it. It was that stressful.
But I don't know, to my understanding, it is hard because if it falls in the holidays, it doesn't matter if you pre-plan, you still can't make any decision about when the burial take place, right? Because it's pretty much, I don't know.
We work every day of the year. So yeah, he could have.
Hmm.
And I could have had longer to plan for it if I'd known.
Okay.
It didn't have to be that fast. I could have waited
Right.
a whole week. I could have waited, it was
Yeah.
a memorial service. My son was cremated, so it really didn't matter.
Hmm.
It was
That's
his
true.
convenience,
Oh yeah.
not mine. So
Right.
that's another big difference.
Right.
All the things that you don't know is what hurts.
Right.
Being inexperienced, not having the knowledge when you're planning. Because if you don't have the knowledge
Right.
and no one's there to guide you, you can way overspend. You can be way too stressful, and
True.
you can find out later down the road that you did the totally wrong thing.
And you are
So
not the stage of mind to think
no,
anything clearly.
no. When you're mourning, that's a terrible time to plan. That is
Yeah.
like
It's
the worst time.
mm-hmm.
So
Or
I
to
was,
make any kind of decision,
yeah. So I mentioned my mother. She had planned her funeral around the time that my son, right after actually my son passed away. She was in her 70s. My dad was in his late 70s. Perfect time to plan.
Mm.
Um, my mom passed away 3 years ago, Christmas morning. But the difference between her funeral and my son's funeral was night and day.
Yeah.
Because my mom had everything prearranged almost 25 years earlier. Everything
Does
was,
things
was taken
change
care of.
though after 25 years? Would things like, what funerals, uh, service, or, would that too long of a time stretch that things might not be up to date?
So that's the beauty of pre-planning. It's
Mm-hmm.
because you are planning for an eventual funeral, but you can write and change
Mm.
your desires as time goes on. Whereas if
Mm-hmm.
you're planning a funeral at the time you lose somebody, you have
Yeah.
a very short window. You have no time to think about things, no time to really contemplate what you want. My mom had 25 years. Every time she'd go to a funeral, she'd write down something that she liked. She saved things, poems that she liked. She saved
Oh, okay.
clippings. So she had 25 years to
Yeah.
plan for this.
Yeah.
So when it came time for me to actually do her
Mm-hmm.
funeral, it was held in the same church as my son's funeral had been held in,
Yeah.
but it was night and day because everything was written down just as the way she wanted it.
Yeah.
What
Well, if I
flowers?
may share with you a story that I
Mhm.
have been to a funeral that was pre-planned, and it's just beautiful. And I know that this conversation, it is very comfortable, uncomfortable, because as Asian, I don't know about you, Sarah, but we avoid talking about death. It's almost like an omen. You don't want
Everybody,
to.
yeah,
I guess
everybody
every
does.
culture, not just Asian, right?
No.
But for us, it's like exceptional. It's like, oh no, you don't even go near there. But American are very practical in a sense, I think. Lots of people buy life insurance. And, some of us don't even want to do that because that's like an omen, like something bad. Lots of us have a will,
Mhm.
right? And, some of us don't think about that, but it can create very chaotic. And some of us thinking about, I mean, many Americans, people I know, do have a, like, I have been to somebody who carved their own tombstones. In my book, I
That's
don't know if you read, like in
yeah.
Onemia, I've gone to this couple's home and he carved his tombstones, his wife's tombstone. He do exactly what he wants, and that's just so beautiful in a way.
Mhm.
But it was like, oh my God, people are so, like, it is practical and plan ahead. So I did have a friend that who's very young, but she get cancer, and she knew that she's fighting the battle, good days and bad days, but she has planned everything down to the T, how to celebrate her life. And, after the cremation, after everything, when she's going to have a service and when she's going to gather friends, and she's going to put all her CD, who she's giving things, her scarves, her momentum, everything. And then people going to, and it's like a big gathering place for all of us to get a like the attribute to her, what she have meant to our life. And it is a wake-up call for me, saying that if you do plan, you will have a service exactly how you want it. That's like she's looking from above and smile from ear to ear. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't know that, but she knows that, right? So
Right.
in your service, do you, like, tell us a little bit about your service? Like, you help people plan locally, internationally. Do you just execute the plan, or you just
Yeah.
planning the plan?
I am licensed in the state of Florida, so
Mm-hmm.
I can't really help anybody outside the state of
Mm.
Florida, but
Okay.
the company I work for is international.
Mm.
So Dignity Memorial is owned by Service Corporation International, which has holdings in other countries, even France, Ireland, the
Wow.
Philippines, Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So that's international.
Mm-hmm.
In North America, we have about 2,400 locations
Mm.
from Canada to Puerto Rico and California to New York. So one of the benefits of working with Dignity is that if you put a plan in place here, like say I put a plan in place here in Tampa and somebody moves to someplace else,
Mm-hmm.
their plan travels with them. So
Mm.
you're not going to lose your funeral arrangements.
Mm.
So that's one really big benefit of putting a pre-plan in place. You're locking in the price not only in time but also geographically. So Florida is one of the cheapest places
So
to have a Florida
they
a
pick
funeral.
their own, like, casket lot and everything. They just like a menu. You have it down to the T, whatever
Yep.
you want. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can pick out everything like a menu, and you can even do it on. I can even do it virtually, so
Oh,
I can
wow.
do it on a computer
Okay.
screen. But one of
Okay.
the beautiful things that we do is I was going to try to see if I can show this, but we have a pre-planning guide. If you can
Mm-hmm.
see that, I'll try to put a picture in the.
Yeah.
There we go. So we give these away for free
Mm.
to anybody. And this you don't have to actually pay anything for, but it gets you through that conversation, the difficult taboo conversation that you don't want to have with your family
Yeah.
members, you can write it down for them.
Mm-hmm.
You can put it
Do
all
you
in
have a
writing.
PDF form that
We
people
do
can
have a PDF
download?
form too. I can
Okay.
email as well. But one of the beautiful things is that you can actually write notes to your loved ones so that when the time comes,
Mm-hmm.
they know exactly what you want, and they know, what to do, how to honor you,
Mm-hmm.
the things that are important to you. Like
Right.
most eulogies are spoken from someone else's point of view, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about somebody else's life
Yeah.
versus you talking about your own life.
Right.
I mean, there might be things that I'm proud of about myself that maybe my kids and grandkids down the road wouldn't know,
Right.
right? So you can write it in your own words. You can pick out the music that was important to you. You can pick out the poems that were important to you, the verses that were important to you.
Is it all Christian, or does that involve in any type of
It can
religions or
be
culture or so?
any religion, any culture. We have done Hindu, Buddhist. We have done every type of service. I mean, I'm more familiar with the Judeo-Christian because
Right.
that's my background.
Right.
So, but we can handle any service. In fact, there is a Vietnamese population that uses blunt and curry in Temple Terrace a lot, and they have 3-day services. So,
Yeah, we used to have like 7 day of Mung chanting in front
yeah,
of the casket.
we've
We
we've
walk
had some.
around.
We've had some where it's been a whole week where they have
Uh-huh.
actually reserved that room
Yeah.
for the entire
But
week.
I really don't see any of those service here in America. We all have it in the funeral home in America. But in
Yeah, no,
Vietnam,
they
it's
have.
always at your own home. And it's
Yeah.
when I was young, I always feel very spooky about it. But yeah, so that is just kind of beautiful if you can get over that hum of the step of that uncomfortable
Right.
and lay
As
things
I
out.
say, my catchphrase is I put the fun in funeral.
I don't
I try
know.
to make this as pleasant
As
an
light as
experience,
could be, right?
as, as
Well,
pleasant an experience as it can be. But
Yeah.
I do want to give everybody the chance to ask all those questions that they never ask.
Yeah.
The things that they don't think about,
Right.
like whatever. It's not, no subject is off the table.
Yeah.
I mean, I have answered questions from how is a body embalmed? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know if you really want to hear this. But if they really want to know, if this is something they're dying to know,
Right.
that's bad. Um, but if it is something that they really want to know, I will be happy to answer their
Yeah.
questions. Put them at
Well,
ease.
I have a question for you. I have
Sure.
heard, like, at least 15 years ago, a friend of mine who also worked in the funeral service, and she was saying that you can actually cremate and compress the ashes into a diamond and
Yeah,
wear it.
they
I was
have
like,
gemstones. Yeah, they have different colored
yeah.
gemstones.
I was like,
Um,
whoa, that's what I want to be.
you could be, what those
where?
worry stones,
Mm-hmm.
worry stones.
Okay.
You can actually have your ashes become part of worry stones that people can hold on to and the family
Wow.
members can have to hold on to. You can have your thumbprint imprinted in silver and worn as a necklace.
Oh, wow.
There's so many different things that we can do. And one of the more unique um, placements for cremation is under the water. We have an underwater cemetery, so you can be actually
Wow.
part of the
Where?
living in the Neptune Memorial Reef.
Oh,
It's
wow.
in outside of Miami, off
Uh-huh.
Key Biscayne.
Uh-huh.
It's underwater, about 40 feet underwater. They built a city to look like the lost city of Atlantis.
Yeah.
And cremains can be part of the coral reef structure of that city. So you could be a mermaid or a
Right.
sea turtle or just part of the walkways or archways or part of a bench placement in the underwater cemetery and become part of the living reef.
People are very creative nowadays, I have to say. I forgot
Yeah.
what part of the world. My husband and I travel, and we went into this place where they have walls and wall, but it built in a beautiful place, and they have wall to wall, like people that, get the ashes. They engraved in that wall, and they say that I want to say Malaysia. But you have to have on the waiting list because it's such a hot place. All the rich people want to be there because it's just so gorgeous and so peaceful, and it's almost like a place that you come to visit your ancestor. And that is just like it's so cool. But of course, you have to have money.
Well, I mean, and we have things like that here where we have glass front niches. So you could have your ashes in a beautiful urn and have a portrait next to them, and you can come in, a couple times a year, come and and put flowers or put mementos in
Right.
the glass
Right.
front niche. So you do have a place to go visit
Yeah.
and memorialize your loved one.
Actually, I think, all this conversation make death look less scary. Because
I hope
ultimately,
so.
right? I mean,
Right.
ultimately, that we are gonna be there. It doesn't matter, 90 years old or 70 years old or whatever. If I mean, we only have a finite time on Earth,
Yeah. Or
and
like my son who was 18 months.
right,
That's all he had.
right,
He had a beautiful life, and his life touched many people, as short as it was.
exactly.
But
But that's a lot of unpredict. It's
yeah,
like unexpected. But a lot of people actually have lived a very full life, and sometimes they want to have something to remember by when they're gone. And some people, when you're celebrating life, it can be a really fun event, like you said, for the family to remember all this great treasure memories that they have with the loved one, instead of just being in stressful situation and argue about what to do,
there's
disagreements.
nothing worse than that. I've
Right.
seen families that have come into a funeral home with no plans in place, and one person says, no, we're going to do cremation, and the other one says, no, we're going to do burial, and
Right.
the argument that ensues, it's
It is
devastating.
heartbreaking. Yeah, it is
It
heartbreaking.
tears families apart, and
Mm-hmm.
if you can avoid that,
Yeah.
wouldn't that be something wonderful to do for your family?
Right.
I can't imagine why people would not want to.
Right.
There's so many reasons to do it.
Right.
You financially, emotionally, you get your own wishes fulfilled. There's just so many different options also. So,
Right.
knowing about it ahead of time, thinking about it clearly, clear-headed when it's not an emotional situation,
Right.
there's so many benefits
Right.
to it.
And 25 years that your mom stay
Yeah.
in a
My
peaceful,
my
very
dad is
peaceful.
my dad is still alive. My dad is
Yeah.
103 years old.
Wow. And it's
And
like an
his
insurance. It's just like you don't have to
Yes,
think about it. Everything
right.
is already taken care of.
Yes. And speaking of insurance, now a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people say that they have life insurance and that's going to take care of their funeral plans. That's great that they have life insurance. You mentioned that earlier, and I had thought about this. Life insurance has a purpose. I
Mm-hmm.
think most people are underinsured, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. I really do. But life insurance has a really beneficial. Excuse, my dog is knocking into my computer screen. Uh, but it has a point. There is a benefit to it. If you pass away too soon, life insurance is there to take up the missing income for the rest of the family and take care of those expenses.
Right.
Life insurance, if you live for a long time, life insurance can be there as a buffer so that you have money to live off of should you need to. If
Right.
if you're in a terminal situation, life insurance is great that you can tap into,
Right.
but using it to pay for a funeral is not what it's meant for.
Right.
So there are much better options for paying for a funeral than life insurance. For one
Okay.
thing, life insurance may have already been used up.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to go into a medical situation,
Yeah.
then that life insurance is going to get used first, and it's
Right.
not going to be there for that funeral.
Oh,
If life
wow.
insurance,
I'm glad
yeah,
it's a Thursday. This topic is getting a
I'm
little.
yeah, um,
Make you think, huh?
yeah. So I mean, if someone has to spend down
Yeah.
to qualify
Yeah.
for care, if they have to have a certain amount of assets, life insurance is considered an asset,
Right.
whereas a funeral is a necessity.
Right.
So if they have to take money and put it someplace, putting it into a funeral plan is a great way of protecting that money. It's going to have to be used anyway.
So your service, do you pay up front everything,
You can
or?
pay for it up front. You can pay for it over time. You can insure it. You can not insure it. You can, there's so many different options. So if you have a big lump of cash and you want to put it someplace and you need to get, to spend down, putting it all into a funeral plan, great way of doing it. If you don't have a huge amount of cash, that's an even better reason to get a pre-plan, because if someone passes away and their family is financially strapped, they're not going to get a beautiful funeral. They're going to get whatever they can afford.
Yeah.
So if you plan ahead, you can pay for it a little over time. So when the time
Like
comes,
installment?
you can do installments. We also do an insurance funded funeral, which is a great way of doing it, because if you pass away while paying for it, the insurance will pay it off.
Mm.
So that's a great way of taking care of your family. So once you start paying for it, you never have to worry about who's paying for your funeral. It's done.
Yeah.
Whether you finish paying for it over whatever time period you want to set it up for, or whether you pass away while paying
Right.
for it, the insurance will pay for it.
Wow. A lot to think about and a lot to digest. As much as we love life, sometimes we just have to think about beyond life. And thank you, Arlene, for giving us all these insights and make us aware that we don't want to deal things in the panic, in the position that we can't make our choice and our decision clearly. So